Good morning, JD.
Reading magazines.
Call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy C. Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Marty Van Ravensway, Commissioner Precinct 2. Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Present.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation this morning will be given by our own Dave Barrett from Tarrant County Sheriff's Office. After the invocation, please remain standing for our pledges.
And we bow, please. Almighty God, maker of all good things, Father, Lord of all creation, in your Son you have shown us the purpose of your providence and call us to be responsible in the world. We pray for the world, for all nations, for our own country, for those in authority, for the peace of the world, for racial harmony, for those who maintain order. And Almighty God, we give you thanks for the order of created things, the resources of the earth, and the gift of human life, for the continuing work of creation, our share in it, and for creative vision and inventive skill, for your faithfulness to us in patience and in love, for every human response of obedience and humble achievement. May we delight in your purpose and work to bring all things to their true end. And I ask this in the name of him whom I serve, Jesus. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thanks again, Dave. Germanius?
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the Court, we have one announcement this morning. It concerns the election administration, which is 7G1. There is a new court communication and new backup material in your red folder for you this morning as it relates to this. Mr. Rayburn will explain those changes when he comes forward in a little while. Also, you might note that on the agenda we have several briefing items today. So our briefing session should be somewhat longer than we've had in the past. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular scheduled meeting of January the 8th.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. The motion passes unanimously. You have before you the consent agenda.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. There's no discussion. Please vote. The motion passes unanimously. Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the Court, I'm going to ask Mr. Renoir to come forward also. On item number 1, we're requesting that the Commissioners' Court approve and sign an order prohibiting outside burning for a period of 90 days from this date or until repealed by the Court in accordance with state law. Mr. Renoir, do you want to address the Court on this particular issue?
I just wanted to let the Court know that the last 2 or 3 weeks we've been seeing 1 to 2 frontal changes come through that's produced some gusty winds and lower humidities. In December of 07, our fire departments in the unincorporated area responded to 63 grass fires, and since the first of this year, 08, they've responded to 30 grass fires as of today. The majority of these fires that we've been able to determine are being caused by outdoor burning that is either not attended or gets out of control. We have our fire departments to where they're responding now with 2 to 3 brush trucks on each call so that they can get a quick attack on it. At the present, as of this morning, there's over 161 counties in the state of Texas that have a ban on outdoor burning. And we feel like that this request will take us into the period of time where we'll see such that we have the green up that we normally get in the springtime that will help us with the dead, dry vegetation that we have. And we'd like to ask the court to approve this request.
This order, if I understand it, can be canceled at any time if we were to have a 4 or 5 inch rain or something and we decided we didn't want the fire ban anymore. Is that correct?
The law allows for the court to come back and repeal it, yes, sir. I'd still like to say to you that the rain, until we get through the period of time where the vegetation can start.
I understand what you're saying. I just asked a question about
Yes, sir.
if we could or if we couldn't.
The answer is yes, you can.
I move approval of the outside burning ban.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just that the state marshal, the state fire marshal apparently agrees with our own fire marshal, Mr. Renoir, that even if we have some rain, that conditions are such that within hours or days we will have burn conditions again, that we need to get through a period of time until we get some consistent rain that will soak the ground, I guess, and renew the vegetation. That's why I'm supporting it.
Any other discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Your Honor, members of the court, just a note on this, Randy, the Emergency Services District, we ordered 6 new brush trucks this year, 6 new brush trucks.
6 new, yes, sir.
And the last of those 6 have now been delivered, or in the process of being delivered.
What does that bring our total up to as far as brush trucks and vehicles?
Well, as far as what the ESD owns is the 6.
Okay.
Also, the
Plus the tankers.
Those super tankers,
we have 8 of those.
8 of those.
Yes, sir. Also, last week we received 3 pallets of, to y'all, it's firefighting foam that the fire departments use to put in their tanks to help suppress the grass fires. And so we have that we're issuing out to the fire departments that came through the ESD also.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Your Honor, members of the court, if we could go to item number 2, we're requesting that the court consider and approve exception to the county travel policy as it relates to Constable Precinct 1 office.
Move approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Your Honor, members of the court, on item number 3, this again is an exception to the within region travel policy. This is for JP Precinct 3.
Move approval.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Your Honor, members of the court, on item number 4, we're requesting that the court approve a second renewal and extension of an office lease agreement between the Hospital District and MHMR of Tarrant County as it relates to Community Center for the Texas MHMR Mental Health Division Fair West program. This particular action had been approved by the Hospital District Board on January 10th of this year. What it does, it extends a current lease from January 1 through May 31st.
Move approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Your Honor, members of the court, we're on item number 5. We're asking for the court to approve and concur with actions of the Hospital District Board of Managers. That action occurred also on January 10th of this year, and approve a lease amendment between the Hospital District and Woodcrest Marketplace Limited Partnership, along with a construction agreement between the district and Hutchinson Construction to establish the Community Health Center and WIC program in the city of Watauga.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Maynes. Like the auditor's next.
Thank you, Your Honors.
Doesn't look like Renee.
No, she's on her way to a training seminar, so I'm here today. We're asking the court to approve the release of approximately $200 million worth of collateral, and with this action, we should be sufficiently covered through the end of this tax collection season, so this should be the last of these releases until sometime in mid-February.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Mr. Wright.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have two separate items on the agenda. The first is a Paxil antitrust class action settlement. We have a check here in the amount of $1,168.66. We're requesting the court to authorize the county auditor to cash the same.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Then item number two is our subrogation recovery funds checks. We have four checks, the first in the amount of $4,902.50, the second $5,806.65, the third $3,851.35, and the fourth $155.91, requesting you to authorize the auditor to cash those checks.
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning, sir. Right ahead.
Here to ask approval for the early voting locations for the primary election and approval of the central counting site. The early voting locations pretty much are typical county early voting locations. We are adding one new location at the Southwest Community Center to take a little pressure off of our busiest site at the Southwest Sub Courthouse. And in Arlington, the Arlington Northeast Branch Library is no longer available to us, and we're asking to replace that with the Elsie Odom Recreation Center in Arlington.
Do we normally get about even numbers of these in each precinct?
Yes, sir, it's pretty close. I don't know the exact number right offhand, but I can get that to you if you like.
I pretty much count them on here, and I didn't come up with as many as some of the rest of them. The reason I was asking, but Como is surrounded by my precinct, so I can consider that man, and that sort of even.
You're always welcome in Como.
You know what? That's what I've heard.
Steve, I want to ask you about the addition of the Southwest Community Center site. There had been some discussion between your people and my office about the need to get some relief in our early voting center, and we had talked about perhaps separating the primaries and having one in the early voting center itself and one in the atrium of the building. Is the addition of this Southwest Community Center site going to make that no longer necessary? Or
I don't think that would be necessary in the primary. Now, we'll have to see how it goes and see how our turnout is in the presidential election. That's what we're really trying to plan for is turnout in November, which, we expect will be very heavy. And the last presidential election was before my time here in Tarrant County, but they tell me that we practically, took over that Southwest Sub Courthouse location. So we want to do anything we can to relieve that, and we're hoping that, we get widespread publicity on the Southwest Community Center, and that would help us in that respect.
well, that doesn't quite answer my question.
I'm not anticipating that we would need both locations in the primary. We would need both areas of the building in November, but I don't think we would in the primary.
Okay.
So, is there a motion yet?
No.
I will move approval.
I'm going to second it just so we can finish today's meeting.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Steve, do you have an update on with Fort Worth ISD? Is everything working well?
We have a meeting this afternoon with Fort Worth ISD to work out the issues with the election day polling places, and we're expecting that to go very smoothly. They've given us positive response, so we're going to be able to work all the issues out.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. Thank you. Facilities management. Come on down.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It is requested that Commissioners Court approve the 61,095 square feet building space program that was presented December 11th of last year, and one of the 3 proposed sites for the medical examiner's expansion project that was included in the 2006 capital improvement program. The sites were at the existing medical examiner's office on Felix Gross Road. The second site is University of North Texas Health Science Center in West Fort Worth. The third site would be at 1401 South Main at the St. Joseph's Garden. The Commissioners Court asked the staff to meet with the representatives of the St. Joseph's Garden to see if we can work out some of the issues regarding converting that particular property to medical examiners' labs and morgues. We met that following Monday on the 17th. And still we have unresolved issues regarding the ceiling height issues. The architects thought we probably could maybe just bust out a ceiling in between 2 floors, and that may be fine, but it still limits the stacking and blocking capabilities because of that structure still there. We still have to deal with the columns and the girders. Also, we learned that the drawings had, the first 10 minutes of the meeting was quite engaging. We learned that the morgue entry and the public entry were on the same side of the building and real close to each other. And Dr. Perwani and his staff didn't think that was a good idea, didn't think the family would want to see people get loaded and unloaded from the loading dock. Also, the use of an elevator is required for this particular facility for the morgue to transport bodies up and down from the autopsy room, the coolers, and the loading dock. And the basement issue that Commissioner Johnson mentioned, it would be an issue regarding if they, in the future, if the other areas in the building were renovated, how exactly would we be able to continue to use the basement of an area of a building that's being renovated? We weren't sure about that. Also, Ron Singer, the chief criminalist with the medical examiner's office, had an issue with the security, the demising wall between the medical examiner's area and other areas for potential tenants next door when that was at least discussed. So I don't believe the medical examiner's office is anywhere further than they were on December 11th. And as far as my position, I still think we would, if we move forward with this project, I believe we would still need to do a full design development and cost estimate on the layout to get a real hands around this project. And that cost was about $500,000.
So your recommendation is?
My recommendation is we have the voters approved $26.5 million, and there's one of the projects, it's option 1, it's the existing site, that we believe we can do it for $26.5 million.
At the existing site.
You know, I guess the comment that I would make, and I really appreciate all the work that y'all have done, and I know we've sent you down a couple of rabbit paths as we've gone through the process. And I think that, you know, we had 3 good opportunities. The UNT site, as well as the St. Joseph site, I think provided us with the potential or with the opportunity to do more than simply expand our location and fill our needs. I think, but at the same time, I don't think it is totally our responsibility to flush out all of that project. With regards to UNT, while I think, you know, from a standpoint, there may very well be a lot more that could be added to the community. It's not a certainty, and just as we would do with a TIF or when people approach us, I think it's got to be a shared type of cost. And from what I can determine, I mean, the UNT process, the extra dollars there would all be borne by us and not necessarily by the rest of the community or by other folks who would benefit from those potential extra projects. The same thing holds true with the St. Joe's, in my opinion, location. You know, in order to really determine whether or not what can happen, we need to spend about, as I understand your estimates, is about $500,000 on doing a complete set of drawings and really studying it in great detail. And then still, while the indication is by the owner and their professionals that we could and should be able to bill that for around $26.5 million, there's certainly no guarantee that that would be the case. And I think we feel a whole lot more certain now about the existing space and what we can bill that for.
We did talk with the property owner, Bruce Stern, yesterday about his cost estimate, and it is HDR's cost estimate along with Thomas S. Burns, their conceptual cost estimate. For them to provide us something they could contract with us for, we would need to do the same design effort that we recommend for the project, the same development exercise. So,
Well, I appreciate the fact that university made the offer. I just wish that we could have come within budget. That would have been my first choice, I think, on this project. And on the St. Joseph's facility, I'm afraid of the mismatch that's going to happen over there, and knocking out floors between certain floors to make the ceiling height the right height. It just sounds like something that I don't want to see us get into.
It sounds to me, it looks to me like the most obvious side is the existing.
I had high hopes for the St. Joseph site, and I think we have done everything that anyone could possibly do to explore that as a viable alternative and to try to make it work. And at some point, you've got to make a decision that it just does not fit. And I think we're at that point now, and I feel good about supporting the recommendation of facilities.
I'll make a motion to that effect.
I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. David, again, thanks to you and your staff for everything y'all did in that regard.
thank you. Secondly, we have it regarding the Plaza Building Historical Archives area. It's requested that Commissioners Court consider the addition of a wall in the area. Currently, the area has been completed and ready for occupancy. Let me give you a little history here, just for quickly, and to get you up to speed on where we're at with this particular issue. As all user groups, we ask the Historical Commission and Susie Pritchett, the county archivist, to approve their schematic design of their layout before we started design, and they did that. Susie approved the archives. Historical Commission approved their space 14-2. They voted 14-2 for the layout. Shortly after that, I received a call from Dee Barker, who's a Historical Commission member, past Archive Committee chairman, and now Archive Committee person. Dee is a person who I respect and admire for her experience, her knowledge, and her commitment to Tarrant County over the years. And she asked me to look into a few things, and I did. She was concerned about the security of the actual archives, the stacks, the way the building laid out. And so I did make a few phone calls. I read her information she gave me. I asked the architects to go back and give us a written report on what they thought we should do. I also talked with Gary Spurrier with the UTA Special Collections Group. He gave us some comments. And also I called Chris LaPlante, his title is the Texas State Archivist with the Texas State Library and Archives Commission down in Austin. And I'll read a statement from Chris, essentially went across the board with the other folks. Chris says in a letter he sent me back in September of 2006, he says, I applaud Tarrant County officials for their decision to develop new and improved quarters for the county's archival holdings. And as you proceed with planning for the facility, I would advise you to establish a policy that allows as few people as possible to have access to the archive area. So we did that. We went to Commissioners Court in October of '06, and it included, the original drawing had a door in between the archives area and the Historical Commission offices. We took that to Commissioners Court. The court removed the door, and however, the court did authorize access to 3 historical archives or Historical Commission members for access to the archives during the day, Monday through Friday, from 8 to 5. So I looked at that in particular, and that's when I first learned about the door issue that Dee Barker had. She also had an issue with the wall, but mostly it was all around about the door and the access between the archives and the Historical Commission. And once we went to court, I thought all that was settled. We moved with design. We bid an award and built the project. In August of 2007, I received a phone call. And Dee asked for a tour of the facility, which was just in final stages of punch list. I gave her a tour. She's commented about we need a wall regarding between the stacks and the public area. There was a subsequent meeting on October 8th of last year with Dee and Ann Hodges, archivist at the UTA Special Collections. I toured Ann through our archives, and we met. And the outcome of that is basically I had instructions. I left the meeting with instructions to do 2 or 3 things. And essentially I was to look at 2 or 3 things, but one of them was to look at the cost of the wall. And I have done that. And the cost of the wall is approximately $30,000. And now what we have today is I see we have a friendly disagreement whether the wall should even be there or not, is where we're at. I think Dee has a genuine concern about the archive security and the current security measures now in place. We've already built a perimeter around the archives from floor to deck. We'll be including the security cameras. When we bid those here in a couple of months, we'll have security cameras in the area. It'll be recorded 24/7. We have card access on the doors going into the archive for the public, and also a door between the public area and the archives. So we've had some significant measures of security, but this would be one more measure that we might want to look at. So I think that I understand that Dee Barker
I have
would like
a public audience participation form from Dee, and are you at a point now where I could ask her up?
Sure.
Okay. At this time, I would ask Dee Barker to come up and Dee, if you'll go ahead and give your name and address, and then for the clerk's records, and then make any comments you'd like to make.
Thank you. Dee Barker, 2200 Oak Knoll Drive, Colleyville. My concern is a properly designed archive. I've been around the court a lot in the county for long enough to know that space is very precious to all the departments here. I've seen so many people sitting in small cubicles. I've seen some departments spread out with people wherever you can find a place to put them. The court has made a very big commitment with that archives, given a lot of space, and I have an appreciation for that. Now we need to do it right. If we're going to build an archive, it needs to be done right. And what is designed now is not an archive. An archive has 3 basic requirements. Well, an archive facility has 3 basic requirements. The public area, where the public must stay. They can't go back into the stacks or into the work area. These plans have that. Then you have the work area, where processing of the documents as they come in, all the processing is done. Then you have a behind-the-scenes storage area, a security storage document room. Now, when they talk about the wall, Well, then the reason I asked to speak is because the way it's expressed here is not what I have said at all. A wall between, they express it as between the public counter. No, you don't want a wall between the public counter and the rest of the place, because that cuts the communication from the staff and the public. I mean, that's just impossible. It's the worst thing in the world you could do. Not only do you need verbal communication to carry on the business, but that is another area of security, to be able to see and to hear and what is happening in the public area. What we're talking about is the construction of the document storage area, which would require a wall between the work area and the storage room. You usually have those three things: the public area, the work room, and the storage room. Normally, the work room is also behind the scenes, but because we have small staff, it made sense in this particular archive with small staff to not put the work area behind the scenes, to have it so that the staff could see the public and can keep an eye on them, because with one person you can't have someone in both places. So, and there's nothing really wrong with having that work area visible, but the stacks, behind the scenes stacks, must be there and must be separate and must have a door that you can securely lock, and that is, without that storage, you don't have an archive. So that it was, I think, just a misunderstanding on the part of facilities. Just like you up there are not archive experts. The county administrators and facilities are not archive experts. None of you are expected to be. That's not your realm. And I think it was just a lack of understanding of what was being said about that having a secure storage room. So that we need to clarify where that wall is going to be built between the work area and the storage stacks.
So in the situation that you're talking about, there would be the public area.
Yes.
And
Which is already separated by a counter.
By a counter, and then behind the counter there would be the work area.
The work, yes.
Is that where new documents would first be brought into the?
First, new documents would first be brought into what is a separate room, a decontamination room, where they should go through a process of decontamination to get rid of insects and bugs, mold, whatever. Then there should be a good secure door, fits tight with preferably with a single door, not a double door, a single door that fits tight with a flexible, say, rubber thing across the bottom to cut down on the migration of insects. They go from that room they would go into a storage room that would, from decontamination to a small room where they would just be shelved until they went in for processing. Then you go into the work area and you process the material by inventorying it, by putting it on the computer, making a computer list of what you have, doing all your paper
And that's all in the
processing
workroom?
That's in the workroom.
Which is right behind the counter.
Which is right behind the counter. So while you're sitting there processing and while you're sitting there doing computer stuff, you can see the people. And if they want to, if they need help, they can immediately motion to you and you go give them help. That's a communication you need. That's what, and then after they are processed, then they're taken back and put into the permanent storage.
Is this going to require an additional employee over there?
No, but it should not require an additional employee at all.
What if this employee up front is back in that storage room?
That takes, 30 seconds to go back there and pick up what you want, bring it back out. And what they need to do is have just a small wall that they can see out. I mean, a small window that they can see through. You don't spend that much time in the storage room. Just go back there, pick something back out. And if you've got your barrier between the public area and the lockers that they can't go through then they can't walk out with something. No, it shouldn't take an employee. Now, you're probably not aware. I operated the archives for 12 years, and several years ago I asked to step down because I was just tired. And I've really backed off. But we worked with volunteers. Now, what I did is I picked my volunteers carefully. I trained each one in a specific area, and that works beautifully. There's not that much traffic. There's not that much people that you need a second person, not at all. Right now, you've got Barnett Shale people coming in, and that's giving a lot more traffic than normal, a lot more people. But that's a very simple thing. They come in and they ask for an abstract. You don't have to do research for them. They come in, they know what they want, they ask for an abstract. Someone can go back there, and if they know the alphabet, all they have to do is pull it out of a box and bring it up. So that's no great shakes as far as needing things.
Dave, I'm looking at the photos that you have. Is the reason that the wall we're talking about 30,000, is that because you've got all the windows and stuff in there, as opposed to if it was just a...
Judge, I think it has more to do with relocating lights, fire protection sprinklers, fire alarm annunciators. There's more than just putting a wall in.
Had there been a discussion prior to, after the fact, about this wall?
Well, we met in October, and there was a line drawn on a piece of paper. Judge Whitley drew that. He said price of that wall, and that's exactly what I did.
Okay.
May I insert something there? I first met with the consultants, Cardinal Burgess, they asked me to meet with them back in 2004, and it came up then. That was supposed to have been a part of the plans. It just never made it, evidently, through facilities. What I asked them to do...
Just a second, Dee. I think Commissioner Johnson had a question.
Yes.
I wanted to see, is Arthur Weinman in the crowd today?
No, I don't know.
I have a letter from Arthur that is in reverse of what you're requesting, and I was wondering if Art might want to make a comment on this today. And another thing I wanted to find out was, has the Historical Commission as a board or a body voted on what you're requesting, or is this an independent request?
Well, I think that's another very basic misunderstanding. In 1975 or 76, I've forgotten, I don't remember, the Commissioner's Court created the Tarrant County Archives. It's not part of the Historical Commission at all. It's in no way associated under the Historical Commission. The archives is under the Commissioner's Court. It's under jurisdiction of the Commissioner's Court. And really, it's not a Historical Commission archives. No, we asked Ann. I wanted to bring this up too. I asked them to ask Ann Hodges because I suggested long ago to the facilities that they ask an archivist to look at the plans, and they consult with an archivist, and it didn't happen. And so I brought that up again several months ago. And I suggested they contacted Ann Hodges. She's director of the Special Collections Archives at the UTA. She's educationally trained and broadly expected archivist. She's been a certified archivist since 1994. She knows her business, and we asked her to bring her in and consult with her. And that's what they did.
Yeah, she came in October, and in the course of that conversation, I think that's where you'd mentioned earlier, was it going to require another employee? In the course of that particular meeting, she said ideally it'd be great to have another employee, notwithstanding the fact that that's a budgetary consideration and certainly not something that I thought would be.
Wall.
Well, the wall is too, but she said, that, if you had another employee, you might not, well, I'm not sure that she said you might not need the wall, but she, in looking at it, said
No.
she definitely supported or felt like that the wall was something that needed to be put in there. That's just, again, one person's opinion, but she is, as Dee has implied, the archivist from UTA from that standpoint.
Well, I don't know if this letter went to all the
I got it.
court, but I was hoping that it had. But
Is Art come on
Art's here.
forward? And Dee, let him have just a chance.
Yeah. But I would like to follow you on that subject, though, that Ann did not recommend that they hire a second person. She didn't at all. In fact, what she said when she was pushed on that issue, she said she thought it was not her place to comment on county hiring.
Okay, thank you.
Shall I
Art, come on
sit?
forward.
You want me to sit down?
Do you have other comments you want to make?
No, I guess not, except I wanted to really clarify what we were talking about, and that it's really, you're wasting county money if you don't design it as an archive. You're wasting county and public money. It needs to be done right.
How are we wasting money?
If it's not properly designed, if it's not an archive.
Is that the way it was designed prior to that location? I mean, is
No, but it was strictly a make-do down in the civil courts building. We did what we could with what we had.
Thank you, Dee. Art, please give your name and address so that, since we don't have an audience participating.
Arthur Weinman, AIA. I've been a member of the Historical Commission for
You need the
longer
address.
than I
Hold
want.
on. We need the address too.
Address? 3717 Stony Creek, Fort Worth, Texas.
Okay, thank you, Art.
I'd just like to make the comment that my first concern was to get the archives in their new location. And then I found out that it was being held up, even though the facility was finished, by discussions about a security wall. And so I asked for more information about it, and I also talked with Susan Pritchard, the archivist, about it, took a look at the situation, evaluated what we have, what we want, and where we're going. And I came to the conclusion that if A, security is an issue, and of course that seems to be on everybody's mind, we need adequate separation of the public from the facility. We have that with a fairly imposing counter. I visited the facility, and I urge all of you to do so. We have one employee, and we have one volunteer. The second volunteer, who had contributed a lot of time, has been ill, and he hasn't been able to meet and help them at the archives for at least the past 7 or 8 months. So you have, bottom line, one person doing the whole job, plus one person coming in on Friday to help. Now, think to yourself, okay, if security is a big deal, you've got all your people parked behind this counter, and you're going to have to be running around in the archives, and unfortunately, finding things in 30 seconds isn't possible. I've visited the archives many times. Finding things is sometimes very difficult. Sometimes it's looking for a needle in a haystack. It all depends upon how well organized that portion of the records are and how easily accessible those items are. You want the one person that's on duty in the archives to be able to maintain at least some kind of periodic eye contact with the visitors and clients on the other side of the wall. That's just logical in running any kind of an institution like this. As far as the requirements of decontamination, of examination, all those different sub-functions that were discussed, I have designed other archives, including the history archives out in Albany, Texas, and whether you wish to separate those as separate rooms, separate facilities, however, depends more upon the opinions of the archivists than it does a real-world situation. My suggestion here is that as long as we have an archives that's staffed by one person, county employee. As long as we're trying to adequately serve the public, we need to direct our efforts in that direction rather than building something that may not be currently required. And in my opinion, adding this wall, this partition, whatever we wish to call it, whether it's at the location as shown on your drawings or whether it's located elsewhere in the facility and the stacks placed at a different location, it's going to impede the operation. It's going to cause a problem that didn't exist. As the facility grows and matures, and as county officials decide whether they need to add additional county staff, then that should be their decision, and that will be brought before you. And as the facility matures, if you need future separations of spaces, you can provide that. We don't have to do it now. There's no waste of money.
So, but in effect, I'm not sure either before or after adding the wall, we would have a certified archive facility. This facility, at least from the conversations that Ann portrayed, this is not going to be what would be considered a certified archive facility.
Well, there are different levels of archives. You have to understand that the archives where Ann Hodges works has a multi-million-dollar collection of historic maps. They have original maps that outline what was intended as the original Texas before Texas became Texas. They have historic maps of the Western Hemisphere in the 1400s and 1500s. I mean, that's an unbelievable collection. It's as much a museum as it is a collection. The standards there are totally different. The standards that we should have for our archives should be very similar to the historic archives that we have at the Fort Worth Public Library, who, I might add, do a better job of maintaining security of their photograph collection than does the UTA. And I've happened to use both. And I commented on that to the UTA people, and they said, oh, well, yes, we're aware of it, but we just haven't gotten to it yet. So the bottom line is there are different levels of archives, there are different levels of security requirements, and there are different demands according to what's in the archives. You can't say that there's one standard for all archives. Likewise, and maybe I'm showing my ignorance here, but I'm not sure who certifies archives. Now, if it's a federal government archives, then of course you've got your GSA and your attendant criteria that you have to meet there. But this is county. I'm not even sure there's a state requirement or a state regulation.
So the Association of Archivists doesn't have any standards whatsoever as far as archives?
I can't answer that. I don't know for sure.
But as far
I know
as
there are recommendations. Yes, ma'am?
I said, but as far as you're aware, what you're saying now is based on your personal awareness of what?
Correct. My personal awareness and my work in the process of my office. The difficulty we have here is that we have an archives that started out in Dwayne Gage's garage. And you did? Well, he was chairman of the commission for years and years and years and years. Anyway, it moved out of his garage into the auditorium at Alice Carlson Elementary School. And then finally, it moved out of Alice Carlson's auditorium into the basement of the Civil Courts building. Now it's prepared to make its big break into the Tech Center building. And as part of the process, it's acquired a full-time archivist, paid employee of the county. And as I'm saying, as this institution matures, we will need to add these different functions as they're required. We don't need to do it all at once right now. And right now, when we're operating with one person, we're better off allowing that one person to have freedom of movement throughout the facility and to be able to see what's going on throughout that facility.
Any other questions or comments of either Art or Dee? Thank you, Art.
Thank you.
Come right ahead.
would just like to clarify this. The archives, when the Commissioners Court created the archives, they immediately provided file cabinets and space for the deposit of material in the old courthouse building. When you decided to restore the old courthouse, the things were moved. I requested space in other county buildings, and the things that were being collected were put there. Some were in the Northeast Courthouse. You generously provided, that courthouse was new and there was an empty room and space was generously provided. The Northwest Courthouse, the Northeast Courthouse provided a room. The archives has always been under the county and the county government. Some things that historical commission members collected, we kept before we deposited it because you gave out of space. And we kept some things. Dwayne Gage did keep in his garage before he turned them over to the county, and I did the same. I had things stuck under my bed before I turned them over to the county because there was not a room for them. When the space, when the new courts building was built down this road, space became available in the civil courts building. We moved everything in there. Well, at one point, too, in 1985, the county leased space in an old school building, and everything was moved there and accumulated in that spot. Then when there was room in the civil courts building, the courts moved out, then we were able to move everything in there. But it's always been under the court, and it's always been a viable archive. And yes, there are degrees, but this archive is a viable archive. It should have adequate storage. Yes, we do have valuable things. We have several documents we have a lot of documents that are historically valuable. We have some that are monetarily valuable, and they need to be protected. You can't say this one doesn't matter just because it's a county archive. It's reached the point that it does matter. But to answer your question, no, you do not need second staff. I was there 12 years. We were able to handle it just fine with well-trained volunteers.
Thank you, Dean.
Archives doesn't, as I understand it, Archives is separate from Historical Society?
Oh, it's separate entirely.
And it's all in the same facility, right?
It doesn't have to be. No, it's not all in the same facility. The Historical Commission has a separate office altogether. No, and it shouldn't be in the same facility. No, it's not. It's an entirely separate thing.
It's on the same floor, but it's in a different space, and that was an earlier discussion that we had with regards to keeping the archives separate from the space where the Historical Commission.
And it's nothing like a library. You can't compare it to a library at all.
I would like, though, for whatever body it is over there to collectively look at and discuss this and come up with a unified recommendation to this court. I feel like now we've got one that's saying it's unnecessary.
Commissioner,
unnecessary expenditure on the county's part. We've got another one that says that it must be that way. What does the group say? I haven't heard from the group.
I thought that was the 14-2 vote.
Well, 14-2
vote for what?
Like it is.
I
haven't heard.
Leave it like without the wall. I'm sorry. I'm
There has never
Hold on
been.
one second.
There's never been a vote that I know of.
I'm sorry. The 14-2 vote was the schematic design that did not have the wall in it. It did have the door, which we removed the door in October, but as it is today, that was the 14-2 vote. Also, if it's okay with the court, we'd like to have Susie Pritchett, who's the county archivist, who will be using this area, speak to you just a minute if you don't mind.
I have a question that I'd like answered before Susie comes forward. Would this proposed wall have any function in providing a protected, controlled environment? Temperature, humidity?
Should have.
Or is it just a barrier?
It's a barrier.
And the purpose of the barrier was to separate the activities.
Yes. What I think it needs to be understood is the reason we ask a certified archivist to come in and give an opinion. County doesn't have anyone our staff is not an archivist. An archivist takes special training, special education, graduate work. Working in archives doesn't make you an archivist. I operated for 12 years. Not once did I refer to myself as an archivist, and I don't think I was. That's not what makes an archivist. We ask an expert, and we need to listen to her. And she says at UTI, if anyone goes into that archive storage room, they take a second person with them. It's really a necessary thing. It's not akin to the library, not in any form or fashion, and that's something that needs to be studied.
Okay, thank you, Pete. Susan?
May I give you all something?
You bet.
Let me have that. I'll hand it to him. Okay.
Thank you for letting me come. I have a wonderful job. In fact, when people come down to the archives after they're in there a little while, then they figure out what a neat collection we have. They almost always say this is a neat place for you to get to work, and I totally agree. And I thank you for letting me come. I do want to point out one thing that I've thought has been kind of an ironic question going on, is that since July of 2005, when the Family Law Center was finished, the building that I'm in has basically been vacated. The courts and the district clerk's closed records that I shared the basement with have all moved to the Family Law Center. After about 2 weeks of being in an unlocked building, facilities decided that it needed to be locked. And so since about the middle of July of 2005, I've basically been in a building by myself in the basement, locked. For a while, I shared an office down the hall with some IT people that was a service office, and so they were in and out all day. And then currently, there's still an office with 3 facilities staff members down the hall, but again, they too are out of the building most of the day doing their work. So I'm quite anxious for you all to decide what you're going to do one way or the other, because I'm tired of being in a building by myself. When I go upstairs, the only way people get in is they pick up a phone in the vestibule, and the phone rings in the archives, and I run upstairs and let them in. And so it's sort of a trust thing. They have to trust me that I'm not crazy, and I have to trust them that they're not crazy, because I get on an elevator with them, go downstairs to the basement, and basically spend the time with them alone. This has been going on for 2.5 years, and I think that the question needs to get decided. The other problem, and that's a personal security issue as far as I'm concerned, the other one with the collection is that currently when people come in, and I don't know if you can tell, but the visitors at the archives have jumped considerably, all due basically to the Barnett Shale, because we have this wonderful collection of abstracts. So it's not uncommon at all for me to be helping someone and having pulled out their research, and they're sitting there at the table when the phone rings and I have to run upstairs to let in somebody else. So basically, I would say for the last 2 years for sure, this has really been a strange situation where you're leaving, if you all are considered about security of the goods down there, they're being left down there while I'm running upstairs to let somebody else in. So that's not ideal either. So again, I'm just anxious for you all to tell me, what your pleasure is, and let's move. Do y'all have any questions, or did you want me to make a comment about the wall? Or
Any Comments or questions that you have, now's the time to do it.
Okay, about the wall, I totally understand where Dee is coming from. I understand but she's also talking about a facility at UTA that has 10 to 12 staff members plus some student activity in behind the wall. I've talked to Gerald Saxon, and who's head of the libraries at UTA, and I know that I'm not trying to get into a catch-all thing, but I mean, there are different things that you have to deal with. Sometimes you have to deal with the reality of one person. When we did set up the plans for the future archives in the Plaza building, we planned all the shelving to go vertically straight back with the idea that the one staff person could look straight back in, and when they're pulling things off the shelves, they could also be able to see the counter. The wall actually impedes that. In fact, one of the comments that Ms. Hodges made was in their studies of theft in archives, it either happened from staff, which would be me, or it would happen from the public there at the counter. It wouldn't happen with people, say, jumping over the current counter and going back there and rifling through boxes and grabbing things. So as far as theft, if that's the issue, then the wall really doesn't act as a deterrent. In fact, I would say that it actually makes it more difficult because I have to issue that I really can't run back there in 30 seconds and get something down off of a shelf and carry it back up the way. I'm not that fast. But I often, I'm certainly not back there hours, but I'm back there a while going up and down shelving, picking out and looking for different things. So just the act of bringing all that stuff back, if it's on a cart, for instance, it just makes it more difficult to be going through a key card door again. If the county had a larger staff, and I'm not asking for more staff, I'm just saying then it wouldn't be an issue. But for a staff of one person, it's a fairly large building. I put on the back the number of square footage that you're planning to have in the new facility, and it's not an inconsiderable amount of square footage for one person to be running back and forth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, court members, any other questions or motions?
I move that we not build a wall.
I'll second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes 4-1. Hold on. 3-2. I'm assuming the green light's going off. Okay, there we go. Thank you.
It is requested that Commissioners Court approve an architectural services contract with Carter Burgess for the Plaza building renovation to do 4 things. Relocate the tax office from the administration building. Number 2 is to renovate both main entries. Number 3 is to replace the security camera system in the building and the associated garage across the street. Number 4 is to improve the directional signage, the wayfinding signage, on the 4-acre Plaza building site to improve wayfinding for the public once all the departments get in there.
Do you want all this taken together, or do you want...
It's one architectural contract, I'm sorry, for all 4 items.
All right, I'll move for approval.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
This was all together, right?
Yes.
Please vote. The motion passes unanimously.
It is requested that Commissioners Court approve an agreement with Tarrant County Credit Union for the Tarrant County to design and construct offices for the credit union on the 6th floor of the Plaza building in downtown Fort Worth.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I think this is going to be a real asset for our county.
Yes, it is. Please vote. Motion made unanimously.
And the last one I have this afternoon.
Passes unanimously, too.
It is requested that Commissioners Court approve an architectural services contract with Carter Burgess for the Plaza building renovation to relocate the Tarrant County Credit Union from the administration building to the 6th floor of the Plaza building.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Glenn?
Run.
Good morning. We only have 2 items for the court this morning. The first item, we're asking the court to receive and file the personnel agenda.
So move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our second and final item, we're asking the court to approve a waiver of terminal benefits for the county clerk's office. The county clerk has an administrative court clerk who's retiring at the end of this month with 400 hours of vacation. This individual is responsible for entering court actions into the court docket. It's the second such position in probate to be vacant. The department is requesting a waiver effective the end of this month. Fiscal impact of $8,372 excluding fringe benefits.
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brewer.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We're seeking your approval today for a contract for Hillary Styron. She's going to be a speaker for special needs preparedness and response for a seminar that we're doing.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Mr. Beecham.
Your Honor, as Mr. Beecham comes forward, I would like to request that on purchasing L3, the telephone system contract, that be held until after close today.
Okay. Beecham, go ahead.
That gives us 2 items for your consideration this morning. Our first item being bid award recommendation in regards to bid number 2008-034, annual contract for the purchase of self-propelled road brooms. Recommendation will be to award on a per unit price basis, selecting as our primary vendor Underwood Equipment, as our secondary vendor Bain Machinery.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 2 is also a bid award recommendation for bid number 2008-046, annual contract for the purchase of GPS survey equipment for transportation. Recommendation will be to award to Western Data Systems on a per unit price basis.
Move approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
As a point of information, just to report on the auction that we conducted Saturday, seems like every time Commissioner Johnson is in attendance, we do well. We did well.
Oh, TC was there also, so.
Yes, he was.
Did you buy a lot?
I didn't buy anything, but I jacked them up.
But collectively with Arlington ISD, Tarrant County MHR, and Tarrant County, about a $500,000 sale. So the weather was very good. And
For this time of the year and no more equipment than we had, I couldn't believe we sold as well as it did. But he had people, this auctioneer we've got has got a following from all over.
had people from Florida. They liked our weather too, and we already scheduled our next auction for August the 9th, and that'll be a mammoth auction.
Weather as much.
Be a little bit warmer out there then, but thank you for your attendance.
Thank you,
Can I
Jack.
ask a question, Mr. Beecham?
Sure.
Regarding the requirement that we identify all of the equipment, the big equipment that we have that does not yet meet the air quality standards and could be upgraded or replaced, do you have the information that the different precincts need for the paperwork that's necessary to apply for the grants?
It's a cooperative effort between Randy Skinner in Transportation and Joy Lee, our fleet director. I don't have it personally. I'm aware of the information. I can double check to ensure that the information is available and everybody has what they need.
Do we, when we spec large equipment, do we now use the future
Yes, ma'am.
specs?
It's all Cat 2 and Cat 3. Yes,
Well, I
that's
thought
correct.
that we did, and we have for some time, haven't
Yes,
we?
yes, ma'am. That's correct.
That's what I thought. So I was very pleased to realize how on top of everything Tarrant County has been for some time in regard to the clean air issues, especially with the real push that the state is undergoing right now to get all of the counties in Texas to become more aware of their need to be compliant with the
And I guess
Clean Air Act.
that as a compliment to the county and to the precinct specifically, we do so very well, so much better than most people do with live auctions. Our reputation across the county, across the state, is that our equipment is maintained tremendously. A lot of the precincts take the time and the trouble to clean up the equipment, to make them auction ready. And it says that in the prices that we receive time and time again. And so from our point of participation, thank you for what everybody does, because we do get the money that we should, and we do quite better than even some of the online auctions, and that's due to everybody's working together. So thank you.
Thank you, Jack. And you may want to ask this question again as Mr. Skinner now comes up for transportation.
Okay, Mr. Skinner. Good morning. Just continuing with the information, if there's something additional with my question.
We are looking at the inventory right now. I'm working with Joy Lee to determine exactly what we have and what may be eligible for to apply under that program. So.
Well, I know that throughout the state, they've had something like 3,000 times the number of applications for grant monies that they've had in the past. So
it's definitely catching on. That is for certain, and that's one thing that we've wanted to take a look at more specifically. I don't know that we have a large number of equipment that would fall in that category, but I believe there are some possibilities that we can take advantage of there. Members of the court, we are asking for your approval of an interlocal agreement with the City of Grand Prairie for improvements to the intersection of Great Southwest Parkway and Mayfield Road. This project is included in the 2006 Transportation Bond Program.
Move for approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Brooks, I believe you have an interlocal agreement.
Mr. Reich, are we fine? I move approval of item 701A and B.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Any appointments? Okay, none appearing. Then next on the agenda is the claims register.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum, if any.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the claims, including the addendum. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, we have several items for the court this morning. The first is an update by the Streams and Valleys group on the Riverside Trailhead. I ask Ms. Price to introduce our speaker at this time.
Good morning. I just want to take a minute. Most of you know I'm treasurer for Streams and Valleys and have been on the board for some time. But we wanted to thank y'all for your help with this trailhead. It is a tremendous dedication, and I went on your behalf because I think Commissioner Johnson and Judge Whitley and Commissioner Brooks were unavailable, and you too, Marty. It was a tremendous outpouring from the community, and GK helped us facilitate several things to get the trailhead done, the water and the paving, so it's great. If you get a chance, do go see it after Adelaide does its presentation. And as a committed trail user, and I probably need to be committed, this stop is a tremendous stop because it's a long way out to that trailhead, and it's the first stop that's got water for a long time, and it's the first one with a porta potty. Which counts sometimes.
Now go ahead and tell us why you know all these things.
Because I use that trail all the time. I wanted to introduce you today to Adelaide Levins, who is our executive director for Streams and Valleys, and she's going to give you just a little brief presentation on this trailhead. Again, thank you.
Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, Judge. Good morning, Commissioners. Just to update you on the Riverside Trailhead, as Betsy said, on December 8th, we dedicated this phenomenal new trailhead just by the Riverside community. It is located near the intersection of Sylvania and 4th Street on the near east side of town. Streams and Valleys has found through its 37-year history of working with the community and developing the Trinity River's recreational amenities that even though a neighborhood as close to the river as Riverside is, there's often not a feeling of connection without an actual physical improvement there. So this trailhead, which is a Class 1 trailhead with many different amenities, as Betsy was describing, provides that critical connection between the neighborhood and our Great River system. As with all the improvements that Streams and Valleys works along the river, we'd like to get all of our government agencies participating in it. The property and the construction funds were provided by the Tarrant Regional Water District. The county, through an interlocal agreement with the Water District, was able to provide the water, which not only is for the drinking fountain and the mister on site, but also irrigating the trees, the over 70 trees that have been planted within the area. The City of Fort Worth provided security lighting, and I would like to say that their nursery provided the 70 trees within that area. And Streams and Valleys facilitated and coordinated the project and also installed the public art component. Bless you. This trailhead dedication and the trailhead itself was very, very special to us because it brought in a neighborhood, as I said, had not been physically connected to the river, and the neighborhood truly embraced the project and participated in it from the very first with the requests of what they would like to see out there. It was chaired by our board member, Irma Johnson Hadley, and joined by Kelly Allen Gray, Phyllis Allen, and Sarah Walker, all three very strong workers within that neighborhood. They were able to recruit some remarkable volunteers for us on that dedication day, including the United Brotherhood of Riverside, the Greater True Light Baptist Church, which helped us do during the ceremony. It has all the amenities of a Class 1 trailhead as defined by the Trinity River Vision Master Plan. Sheltered picnic tables, water fountains, for both humans and dogs, I might add, a cooling mister, and a restroom. And what the restroom facility is a enclosure for a porta potty, because there's nothing uglier out on our beautiful river than a big turquoise blue porta potty. So one of our board members, Gary Kudelek, designed an enclosure for those, and those will be replicated as we develop more of these trailheads. Truly unique to this trailhead is the public art installation. After the Trinity River Vision Master Plan was adopted by Streams and Valleys, our board made a commitment to start incorporating public art into these. The committee, with the members that I stated before, selected a local Fort Worth artist, Letitia Huckabee, to get photographs of life within Riverside neighborhood. It shows the matriarch of the neighborhood, Ms. Leslie, the church life, and then sports life, which is so important to the youth in the area. These are 4-foot by 6-foot enameled porcelain panels out there along the river, so they can be seen from quite a ways away and make quite an impact on the trail users. The dedication ceremony, we got lucky on weather, December 8th, was attended by representatives from each of the participating governmental agencies. The Fort Worth Rowing Club rode up and joined us. We had lots of cyclists as well. Bob Ray Sanders did a remarkable editorial that morning in the paper about the trailhead and the community itself. And probably about 150 of our Streams and Valleys supporters joined us that morning.
Betsy, you didn't ride your bike up there?
No, I had to get speech. I didn't go in my clothes. I try to move so fast that you can't see me in public in those shorts. I would like to add the photograph of Ms. Leslie, who I was told was just a remarkable woman within that neighborhood. Ms. Leslie unfortunately passed away 1 week before the dedication ceremony. However, her entire family from across the country was there for her burial and stayed through that weekend so that they could participate in the dedication ceremony. They have already committed to do another park bench at the site in her memory. And I just wanted to say thank you all for participating in this, and if you have any questions, happy to answer them.
Any questions?
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much for your work.
I commend you for including the public art. I think that's such a tremendous asset. And unfortunately, we've not done a good job of including that in a lot of our public commitments that we've made. Art has not always been a part of it, and so I'm really impressed that you've put that into your plans for the future.
Thank you very much.
And your sensitivity in making it neighborhood specific is to be
Oh,
committed.
that was the funnest part of the whole project. I learned so much, and we had a great, great time working together. Thank you.
Your Honor, item B is a briefing to the court as relates to the county's stormwater management program permit application. Mr. Burns is here to address the court at this time.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to give you a summary of Tarrant County's efforts to comply with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality's, TCEQ, Phase 2 Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, or MS4, General Permit, number TXR 040000. On August 13, 2007, the TCEQ issued this Phase 2 MS4 permit. To obtain permit coverage, counties and cities are required to submit a Notice of Intent, or NOI, and Stormwater Management Program, SWMP, to the TCEQ in Austin on or before February 11, 2008. The Phase 2 MS4 permit is a general permit valid for 5 years from the issue date. Therefore, Tarrant County will have until August 13, 2012 to fully implement our SWMP. The county will be required to submit annual reports to the TCEQ on the progress of our yearly goals that are stated in our SWMP. The Phase 2 MS4 General Permit requires regulated entities to develop, implement, and enforce, to the extent allowable under state and local law, a stormwater management plan to reduce the discharge of pollutants in stormwater to the maximum extent practicable in the urbanized areas of the regulated entity. The urbanized area is an area of high population density as defined and used by the U.S. Census Bureau. In general, the UA is a central place or places with a residential population of over 50,000 people and 1,000 people per square mile. This means Tarrant County's stormwater management program targets only the urbanized areas in the unincorporated county areas. The attached map details the urbanized areas in the unincorporated Tarrant County that was with your packet. The permit also requires regulated MS4s to develop best management practices, or BMPs, for 6 minimum control measures in their stormwater management program. The 6 MCMs identified by the TCEQ, or the 6 main portions of the permit, are public education and outreach on stormwater impacts, public involvement and participation, illicit discharge detection and elimination, construction site stormwater runoff control, post-construction stormwater management in new development and redevelopment, and pollution prevention, good housekeeping for municipal operations. Tarrant County Stormwater Management Plan has 3 to 11 best management practices per minimum control measure. Each county BMP has a start and end date. This allows for the BMPs in our program to be phased in over the 5-year permit term. The majority of the BMPs have start dates in the 2nd or 3rd year of the permit. The Transportation Department and the Public Health Department Environmental Health Division will be responsible for the development and implementation of the Stormwater Management Plan. Since 1999, Tarrant County stormwater staff have served on state, regional, and local task forces, submitted comments during EPA and TCEQ public hearings, conducted numerous training workshops for fellow counties and cities, and were leaders in development of several regional BMPs. While Transportation and Public Health will be responsible for the county's NOI and stormwater management plan, we will need help from various other county departments. During the course of normal county operations and reporting procedures, stormwater staff will work with the following county departments to receive reports and perform stormwater BMPs. Public Information Officer in the County Administrator's Office, Illegal Dumping Team in the Sheriff's Department, County Extension Agents from the Texas AgriLife Extension Service, Supervisors in the Tarrant County Facilities Management Department, and Project Supervisors from the 4 precinct maintenance facilities. The current estimated cost of the stormwater management plan for Tarrant County is about $5,000 to $10,000 per year. In general, this money is used to join the stormwater management program through the North Central Texas Council of Governments to fund public information, flyers, pamphlets, purchase future employee training materials, and other program costs. The majority of the fund will come from the Transportation Department budget, with the remainder from the Environmental Health Division budget. Since the activities in the stormwater management plan can be phased in over the 5-year permit term, stormwater staff has tried to arrange for future costs of the SWMP to be manageable over the coming years. There is the potential that at least one new staff position may be needed in FY09 or FY10 to accomplish the heavy workload scheduled during permit years 2 through 4. After submission of the Tarrant County's NOI and stormwater management program to the TCEQ, they will require a public comment period. The TCEQ's Office of Chief Clerk will contact Tarrant County with the information required for a notice to be published in the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. The public comment period begins on the first date the notice is published and ends 30 days later unless the TCEQ decides that a public meeting is necessary due to the amount and type of information received by the TCEQ during the public comment period. The TCEQ Executive Director, after considering public comment, shall approve with conditions, or deny the application based on whether the NOI and stormwater management plan meet the requirements of the Phase 2 MS4 permit. The Transportation Department and the Public Health Department Environmental Health Division would like to present the NOI and stormwater management plan to the Commissioners Court on January 22nd of 2008 for your approval. After approval, the county judge signs the NOI and the information will be submitted to the TCEQ on or before February 1st, 2008. Are there any questions?
Any questions, court members? Thank you very much, and we'll have that on the agenda then next week.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
We believe that the NOI and the SWMP, which is in compliance with the TPDES, it will be acceptable by TCEQ. After we submit this. I'm right.
That's pretty good. Very good. Very good. Thank you
Wrote
very
all
much.
that down, huh?
Well, you'd have to cheat to get it
Thank
right.
you.
I'm glad that we at least know you can read.
The third item we have is one that's going to be presented by Facilities. Mr. Phillips is here to address the board at this time.
This is an update on the Green Bay Kitchen upgrade project. The court approved design and bid of upgrading the existing Green Bay Kitchen for two reasons at the request of Facilities Management. One was to upgrade it so it can act as the main kitchen for 12 to 18 months while we renovated the downtown kitchen. That reason is no longer valid because we're going to be building a new kitchen. That's one reason.
Are there some acronyms for this?
That's why I'm here. And also, number two, we've bid the project twice, and the purchasing department has spent quite a bit of time finding other alternatives to see if we can buy the equipment ourselves direct and put it in with some of our contractors, and still all three are over budget. So all three options. So that's why I'm here, because the project is more than the court approved, and the goalposts have moved. So I think there's at least three options. One is to move forward with the current bid. The bid we have now for $880,000 upgrades the Green Bay Kitchen to a full cook kitchen that will serve the entire population. However, we wouldn't use it as a permanent kitchen because of the transportation costs regarding moving 3,000 meals per feeding downtown Fort Worth. I've met with the sheriff. I've met with the sheriff's staff. I've met with the food services, food jail kitchen director, their president, and my staff. And basically, the sheriff's department recommends we move forward with the upgrade at the full $880,000, which would provide a new equipment, larger equipment, extended infrastructure, electrical, plumbing, mechanical required for the new ovens, additional ovens that are out there, in addition to what they have out there now, an additional walk-in freezer that would sit on the dock, and things of that nature. Facilities management.
What is their justification for that? Because we're going to leave the existing kitchen where it is until the new jail is built, and the new kitchen's going to be in that. What's the justification for spending $800 and something thousand?
As a backup, a full-service backup kitchen. I've been
Because
thinking.
we're going to take the existing kitchen down and use that more as a
Not until the new one.
Well, I do understand that, but I'm just saying, once the new one is built, then the old kitchen is going to be taken out
For court staging area.
for court staging area. And so, but we currently don't have a backup kitchen.
We have a backup kitchen, Judge. at Green Bay now. What the backup kitchen it was designed to do in the original Green Bay expansion project was handle for emergencies, which would be essentially emergency. I define an emergency as 1 hot meal a day for the inmates and 2 colds, which right now they get 3 hot meals.
What is
And
required?
1 hot and 2 cold. We're meeting jail standards.
I think it's something along those lines. I don't have that exact answer.
Is that right or wrong?
2 hots and 1 cold is
Okay.
required by jail standards.
So you're in violation of jail standards if we serve 2 cold meals in 1 day? Have we ever done that?
Now, when
We
we,
have been in violation.
when we have emergencies down in the existing kitchen, remember, it's 17 years old. It's tired. There's no question. And I've met with the staff, and they just work around the issues. We haven't had a catastrophic failure, but we've had to shut the kitchen down and move. Now, we have probably 3 to 4 more years before we move to a brand-new kitchen. So really, we're talking 3 to 4 more years of...
How many times have we had the kitchen shut down to the point that we had to go to emergency meals? Have we ever?
In an emergency meal, what would you do? Colds, I guess, sandwiches, or what would you do for? When you have an emergency, do you have a period of time that you can have an emergency when it's no longer an emergency? 3 or 4 days. Well, that's the end of my questions, JD. That's the end of my question right there. I wonder how long.
3 to 4 days.
3 to 4 days was how long an emergency
3 or 4 days
lasts.
before we start having problems with the inmates.
Chief, in our current contract right now, what is in the contract with our supplier for emergency meals? Do we have anything?
They would provide cereal, cold meals, those type of things for about 3 or 4 days. And then if we had a catastrophic failure, then we would have to go to an outside vendor, either with Mid-America or someone that would be able to quickly handle the number of meals that we serve each day.
So we currently don't have any provision within the contract that would say, in case of this, here's what's you'll provide us with 3 hot meals, and here's what the cost of the 3 hot meals will be.
I don't believe it specifically addresses that.
Okay.
So, because it's a limited period of time for this emergency to last.
Right.
Okay.
But if we go with the proposal, either 1 or 2, either one, aren't we going to have to be closing down some beds at Green Bay to do this?
If we go with the full option, part of that is taking a 24-person pod and converting it to a dry storage. Now, we would cut a hole, essentially we would cut a hole between the existing kitchen and that particular pod, and we would put a steel plate over it for permanent, and when we needed it for dry storage, we would take the plate off, and then we would cover the dry storage. Currently, it's got bars. We would take all that pod and cover it with solid metal panels to make it dry storage. So if today we were to go ahead and move forward with this, it would not necessarily take that pod permanently, only in emergencies.
Well, once we get finished with that process, we're going to end up with a full kitchen that we won't be using.
That's right.
That's correct. Currently, what we have out there now, they're using the dishwashers to clean up the dishes. They're using one of the kettles to heat water for drinks. That's about it. I think they use one of the coolers, walk-in coolers for the milk. Other than that, it's got about 4 or 5 walk-in coolers. The freezer's not being used. We have to operate those and pay maintenance costs and electrical costs so they'll be ready. Shutting them down is probably the worst thing to do with those kind of equipment. So it is not being used as a cook kitchen today.
So if we don't spend this $800,000, what is the capacity of the kitchen at Green Bay as it is now to serve as a backup in an emergency?
It'll handle the population now. It was designed to handle Green Bay on a day-to-day basis. It was handled designed to handle Green Bay, and Cold Springs, 2,500 inmates, 3 times a day. And on an emergency basis, it was designed to handle 5,500 inmates in an emergency basis. And again, I'll define emergency as just a couple of days or a week at
I want
cold
to be sure I
meals.
understood what Commissioner Brooks' question was. You were talking about our existing kitchen serving as a backup?
The existing Green Bay kitchen, if we don't spend this $800,000 to upgrade it, what is its capacity to serve as a backup in an emergency?
Okay.
It will serve as a backup. If we had a failure downtown today and we had to move kitchen operations, we could feed our inmates from the Green Bay kitchen. However, we would be in somewhat
Just like it is.
Yes, yes, sir.
For this limited period of time.
Yes, we would be scrambling to do whatever necessary to get the downtown kitchen going, which
And
we
in
may
all
do.
likelihood, we're going to be in violation of jail standards at that point in time because we're probably not going to be able to prepare 2 hot meals out of that facility.
That's correct. We made some phone calls to other
I
counties.
don't think jail standards are going to get too excited. I may be wrong.
No, I don't think so. Not in an emergency situation. Do you, Bob?
No. If it was extended, then perhaps it
Yeah.
would be a problem.
Yeah, if it extends past 2 or 3 days, we may have to do something else. But
Is there some number smaller than $800,000 that will allow us to upgrade the Green Bay kitchen to the point where it can serve as a backup and meet jail standards without spending $800,000?
$729,000.
Oh, well, that's it. Okay, you know.
He asked the question.
Well, that's good. I appreciate you having the answer.
We have the
You
answer.
anticipated that. Good for you.
That was the base bid. When we did the second bid, Commissioner, we looked at options to reduce costs and reduce scope. And like we've done on all of our projects, this is just another one we had to do it on. And the base bid came in at $729,000, and the add alternates was the freezer and some other things. We thought, in an emergency basis, we could cook out there, and instead of putting a permanent freezer, we would look at a freezer truck. If it's just a few weeks, we can go get a truck for about $2,000 a month. That would keep the food very cold. If it's nothing but an emergency, kitchen's what it would become. And I'll say, again, the goals have changed in this project. We were going to use it for 12 to 18 months when we first started this thing out, but that's no longer the case.
And that's because we don't have to tear it down until we...
That's because we're building a brand-new kitchen. When we met in March of '07, when we talked about the location of the jail, one of the things we discussed was putting the kitchen in the jail project and removing the booking part of it. So
not doing anything right now would leave us where we have been for the last umpteen years. And
actually, Commissioner,
actually, when the new kitchen is built, then we're still going to be in the same situation that we've been in since Bob Knowles has been over here.
we actually didn't have a backup kitchen until 2005.
2005. Okay.
So previous 2005, we would have...
We're much better off today than we were prior to 2005.
Yes, sir.
Well, I, for one, think that we can hold off on the $800 and something thousand expenditure at this time.
I have a real personal issue with every time I think about the services that we're required to provide when it starts costing that kind of money. You know, we have men and women in Iraq that don't get guaranteed 2 hot meals and a cold meal a day. And you can say, yeah, they volunteered to be there, and yes, my son volunteered to be there, but the people in the jail volunteered to be there by doing something they shouldn't have done. So I have a problem spending that kind of money.
Any other questions of David or Sheriff's Department at this time? Any other comments you want to make?
We have a bid for this work that expires in mid-February. I was going to ask the purchasing department to bring it to court for approval or disapproval. Do I have that? Essentially, do I have direction now where I would not even do that? Just do not do the project? Is that?
I think Chief Knowles would like to make a comment before we answer that question.
Yes, I wanted to add that the sheriff was in favor of this additional kitchen because the one that we are in is getting older and older, and the chances of a catastrophic failure increase every day that we operate it, and the kitchen for the new jail is still probably 4 or 5 years away. So we wanted to have a reliable backup that we could get up and running and operate for an extended period of time should we have a catastrophic failure in our existing kitchen. GK did remind me that prior to coming over here, apparently there was a problem in the kitchen where it flooded, and they had to go to emergency operations and prepare sandwiches for 2 or 2.5 days or 3 days. But our concern is whether or not there's anybody out in the community that could come in and take care of our needs for an extended period of time and meet jail standards. Sir?
Has the Sheriff's Department done any research on that?
The only ones that would come close would be people like Sky Chef, people that cater to the airlines industries, and those costs are $3 to $4 per meal. And so we're doing about 10,000 meals a day now. We'd be looking at a tremendous cost.
Wendy's has some 99-cent hamburgers.
Sir?
Wendy's has some 99-cent hamburgers.
Right.
Mr. Beecham?
Mr. Beecham?
I think has some comment.
We had conversations with our current food provider. That contract is still live for this year and one more year as an optional renewal year. We had conversations with them in regards to before Rita Katrina or during Rita Katrina, and they had the capacity to help us out in an emergency with certain degrees of service. So that's something that we've had available also. But I do want to bring that information about the contract in 2 years. It will be up for bid again. We looked at every option available to decrease the cost of the $729,000 that David talked about. Purchase off state contract. We've done everything we can do to try to decrease those dollars, and that it is what it is, unfortunately.
Was this bond money? No. General fund money?
I believe your question was, should you plan on bringing the bid before court between now and the middle of February?
Yes, that's the question before the court.
I don't see a real excitement.
I'm not real excited about it, but I'd like the opportunity to consider it for a while before I say yeah or nay.
Well, I guess what I'd suggest is that maybe you have some conversation with the court members, and if there is an interest in bringing it back to the agenda, Mr. Manius, then we can do that at that point in time. Again, I understand that our kitchen is old, and I understand that that's, it'll probably be 4 or 5 years. Chief, I guess one of the questions is if it was going to be 1 year, and if it was coming on in a month, would it make a difference? And I understand that we could find ourselves several times over the next 4 years having to do something along those lines. But part of me also says is that if we weren't going to do it, if it was a month away, that's $880,000 we're going to invest and may never use, may never need to use.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor, that's all we have at this time. We do have 2 audience participation.
Yes, we do. The first is that I have here is it John? Is it Dwyer? Would you come forward, please? Please give your name and your address, and then make any comments you like.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
My name is John Dwyer, and my address for business is 8115 Preston Road, Dallas, Texas.
Okay.
I represent Cole Development Company, who is the developer for Centerport Business Park in Tarrant County. And this item that I'm voicing about today is not on the agenda, so I don't think any of you know what it's about at this point. I think Commissioner Feckus is aware of it, though, and you'll be discussing it in closed session today. And the concern is that there's a piece of property that's owned by Tarrant County that is an old roadway that is, I don't know if it's officially abandoned, but it's not of use. It's just a dirt piece of parcel that is adjacent to one of our properties that we own in Centerport. This is not considered part of Centerport, but it is adjacent to Centerport. And
Did this abandoned piece of road have a name?
yes, I believe it's called the Dallas Fort Worth Pike Roadway.
Okay.
And I may be wrong on that, though, but
I think I'm familiar with what you're talking about.
yeah, and we have a building just adjacent to this property that is housed by the Small Business Administration disaster recovery for the entire United States. So when a disaster does occur, these people spring into action, and they have a large parking lot adjacent to this to house their employees, to allow them to park there. The concern that we have is that there is a sexually oriented business that is interested in purchasing this roadway from the county, which is, the county, I understand, plans to sell this road. We are also interested in purchasing the roadway from the county to basically thwart the effort of the SOB to open up that business. And I am requesting that the county consider our formal proposal that has been presented to Jeannie Green at this point to only sell the roadway to us. Okay, and I also represent the neighbors in the community there at Centerport, in that our concerns are that there's going to, if the sexually oriented business does eventually get built, which it's a legitimate business and they are planning to do this, I understand, there will be a severe reduction in property values for Centerport. And we have, over the years, worked in conjunction with the city of Fort Worth and the county in trying to develop Centerport to a viable business concern. And we have about 400 acres of land left to develop there. And we want to make sure that that land is highly marketable from a property value standpoint, and that that's a destination that quality businesses would like to make their home. And we feel that the fact that a sexually oriented business could eventually get built there will be a severe detriment to that, and that it will reduce property values for our business park, and Tarrant County will be affected by the decrease in property values and the higher crime rate and all of the things that are associated with that type of business. Now, I've got one of the property owners, Granger, who has just recently built a facility at Centerport with us today, and she, I think, is also wanted to voice a little bit of concern on that today as well. But
thank you.
Anyway, that's all I really wanted to present to the commission today, and I appreciate your time and consideration in when you speak with Jeannie Green about this issue, to consider our proposal to you all and selling that to us.
Rob, we appreciate very much you coming out today. Now, I would normally make the statement that we cannot discuss this. Ray, is because the fact that that is on closed agenda, does that allow us?
No, it does not.
It does not allow us.
Not really on closed agenda, because I can tell it's possibly under real estate matters, so I don't know where.
Well, if we're selling property, that would be real estate matters, so.
Doesn't make it eligible for open.
That's what I needed to know. Mr. Dwyer, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
You've heard the guy say that we can't talk, so we won't talk.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
The next participation form I have is from Curtis Wise. Mr. Wise, if you'd come forward and likewise give us your name and your address.
Curtis Wise, 2032 Reserve Court, Flower Mound, Texas. Sorry, let's see if we can make this thing. There we go. Is that better? Okay. Mr. Dwyer has semi-introduced the reason that I'm here. I have the developer of the property that is adjacent to the abandoned road and is in discussion. It's on the north side of the road. Mr. Dwyer's property as part of that project is on the south side of the road, and it is fully developed. The road is approximately a half an acre of nothing. It starts, it's just there, and part of it has been acquired or taken or assumed by other properties over the years back to the west, so it really goes nowhere. Because we do have an undeveloped property, if we had the opportunity to purchase the road or purchase half the road, which would be since both property owners obviously want it, it would give us additional landscaping, buffering, hedges, fencing, things that would make our business attractive and not interfere with the neighbors in the Centerport complex. I would also like to point out that the entrance, egress and ingress into the property will be off the access road and not through the Centerport Park. So it'll be a destination, enter, leave, and it would not interfere with the Centerport Park. And I didn't come as a discussion as to whether we have a legitimate business. We do. We have legitimate authorization from the city. We do. And I didn't come to discuss that, but it's not automatic that property values go down. Property values go down in areas for many, many reasons, and it's been proven over and over and over again throughout the United States that done in the right way that these businesses do not cause a decrease in property values. The city of Fort Worth has some very stringent rules and regulations regarding our business, such as, the licensing and background checks and how we can build a structure and what the outside looks like. So there's a lot of things that go into it that make it as non-offensible as possible to the surrounding neighborhoods. It's also in an industrial zone, which the community of Fort Worth has allowed that to be. So we started trying to buy this road a year ago. We surveyed it. We got a title commitment. We worked on it, and then possibly early fall, Mr. Dwyer had contacted me about the business that we were going to locate there and offered to buy our property, which we would gladly have sold for what we had to get out of the property, what we saw as a value. That property had been for sale for years before we moved there, before we bought it. I don't know how long it was listed. It was listed for a long time, but we have this road. We'd like to buy it. You guys can decide, but we'll take all of it or half of it, whatever you think is fair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wise?
Yes.
Again, you understand we can make no response?
Yes, sir, I do.
Mr. Manius, is that all?
That's all we have at this time, Your Honor.
Commissioners Court will now recess the open session and proceed to closed session to discuss items exempted under sections 551.071, 072, 074, 076, and 087 of the Texas Government Code. Having returned from closed session, we will now address the following items. 2 items. Mr. Beecham?
Seems awkward for me to do, Mr.
Yeah, he gets pretty wordy.
Do you know the difference between Arkansas football and Cheerios?
No, please tell us.
Arkansas Cheerios look good in a bowl.
That's
Good.
great.
You know, he's been waiting to say that all week.
I hope Duff got that on screaming
He did.
video.
He did. So did the rest of the world that is currently watching us.
That's great.
So true.
Better than Cowboys.
They took us off the hook.
Are we in session?
Yes.
Your Honor, other members of the court, we have one item left to discuss. We're seeking permission to accept or take RFIs and RFPs for the inmate telephone system contract.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Welcome to Fort Worth, if we are on the web. Under the DA's office, item number 3, we're requesting authorization to expend $5,000 for some expert witness fees, with it to come from Self-Insurance Litigation Fund.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. There being no further business, we're adjourned.
Adjourned.
Don't you have like witness money in your
I tell you what, I don't know if it's the dust and all that historical archives they were talking about.
It's,
That's why
I think
you
it's
saw
this
that.
weather change that we're about to have. I think.
Is it coming in tonight?
Coming in tomorrow.
You know,